Hello, Jane Roxana here, and this is my 5th show, and we are dealing with day 3 of creation. This will be part 1 with the land and the seas. Now, I'm going to be reading Genesis chapter 1, 9 and 10, and it says, "And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together to one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and he called the gathering together of the waters seas. And God saw that it was good." That's pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to expand on that a little bit. Now, the New Defender's Study Bible Notes reads as such: "The work of the 3rd day began with the laying of the foundations of the earth, by the power of God's spoken word. The waters under the firmament apparently still contained all the material elements of the earth in solution or suspension until the energizing word initiated a vast, complex string of chemical and physical reactions to precipitate, combine, and sort all the rock materials and metals comprising the solid earth. The earth, Hebrew word eretz, thus formed was the same earth which had initially been without form." The same word eretz is used in Genesis chapter 1, 1, 2, and 10, but it was now dry land, no longer mixed in the initial watery matrix. It kind of gives a whole overview of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to read a couple other verses. Job 38:4 says, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth?" Proverbs 8:29, "When he gave to the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth." That is definitely talking about day 3. And here it says the waters should not pass his commandment, which means it ends at the beginning of the land. Psalms 33:7, "He gathereth the waters of the sea together as a heap. He layeth up the depths in storehouses." Talking about 2 different things here. The seas in one place and the depths in storehouses. Great storehouses of water up underneath the crust of the earth. Genesis 7:11 is talking about Noah and what happened then. "In the 600th year of Noah's life, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open." So when the flood started, not only did it just rain, but all those storehouses of water underneath the earth broke up through the crust of the earth, which also helped to cover the whole earth with the flood. Now, this is possibly the time God initiated Earth's magnetic field. Proverbs chapter 8 talks about wisdom, but within this chapter, verses 27 through 30, it talks about day 3. "When he prepared the heavens, I was there," talking about wisdom. "When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. When he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep," the storehouses. "When he gave to the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth. Then I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him." The wisdom of God in creation. Verse 27, "When he set a compass upon the face of the deep." What does a compass need to work? Earth's magnetic field. That was included talking about day 3 in these 4 verses. Psalms 3:19. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens. Proverbs 3:20. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. All right, I'm going to show you a globe of today. This is the globe of today. What was the earth like before the flood? This is after the flood. Mostly water still remains. What if before the flood it was just the opposite? Mostly land with only one heap of water. Because it says in there, he gathered the waters of the sea together as in a heap. All right, one big sea and the rest land. God created the earth to be inhabited by people. All right, right now, not much land for habitation, is there? All right. And a lot of this land is not even habitable right now. Up north and down south are too cold for habitation unless you build something in there. You most certainly can't grow anything. And there's also deserts that are very inhabitable in the earth. So what was the earth like before the flood? Well, let's look at some of the fossils. Plant and tree fossils up in Alaska show a much warmer climate. Even in Greenland, way up there. Fossils in Greenland show it once had a lush forest. Can you imagine that? A lush forest in Greenland? Warm weather, even tropical plant fossils have been found in both the Arctic and Antarctica, suggesting vast forests. So a lot warmer weather back then, before the flood, because these fossils were created during the flood. Fossils are only created with rapid burial, not with just natural death, all right? Plants that naturally just fall to the ground, they compost, they disintegrate. They do not make fossils, okay? They have to be rapidly buried in sediment to create fossils. The same thing with animal fossils, rapidly buried in sediment. Animals that die naturally on the ground, what happens? Well, animals come and eat them, and their bones get strewn out, and they organically return to the soil. There's nothing left of them. They don't turn into fossils naturally. And there is a huge supply of fossils, which means there was a huge flood. Secular scientists would like to believe there was many different floods creating different fossils all over. But the Bible teaches there was one big flood. All right. Just a heads up on that. Now, what else can we gather of maybe how the early earth was? Well, Genesis 2 expands on Genesis 1 a little bit. So I'm going to read Genesis 2, 10 through 14, and then I'm going to read a little article on that. A river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it was divided and became 4 heads. All right, so I'm just going to show you that. Here's the river and 4 heads. So divided from it was 4 heads. All right, the name of the first of Pishon, that it is it which surrounds all the land of Halah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one that surrounds the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Tigris. It is that which goes toward the east of Assyria, and the fourth river is Euphrates. All right, so it gives us a little idea of the rivers, and also that there was the gold and bdellium and onyx stones and probably all the other metals and rocks that God put together at that same time for the earth. All right, so Brian Thomas wrote an article titled, "What was the pre-flood world like?" Many who study Genesis show intense curiosity about the pre-flood world, but the world that then existed perished, being flooded with water. So little physical evidence remains. Reconstructing the pre-flood world is like building a puzzle after all its pieces were run through a blender. However, Genesis gives us a good start. Genesis 2:10 seems to indicate that a river flowed out of Eden and then branched into 4 separate rivers. If so, this might indicate divinely crafted waterways, since today's natural drainage rivers don't branch downstream but instead merged into larger rivers. Waters presumably flowed to the pre-flood ocean, so something must have pumped water back to Eden. Genesis also says, "A mist went up from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground." Perhaps heat from deep underground elevated water into ancient land, misting, and river systems, now all utterly destroyed by the flood. This idea of a pre-flood hot water pumping system might also help solve some geological mysteries. Banded iron formations extend throughout many of the lowermost sedimentary rocks. These don't form today, but hint at extensive hot water flows in the past. Also, many stromatolites occur in deep sedimentary rocks, possibly deposited before the flood. Stromatolites have sedimentary layers stacked in blob-like shapes. Though rare today, special algae form them in shallow and salty or mineral-rich waters. But we can only guess at what the pre-flood world looked like because it was utterly and completely destroyed. Oh, one more thing I want to add to it. If also the earth was mostly land and highly vegetated with, one whole set of water here, it would also increase the CO2 and the oxygen content, increasing the temperature of the earth, making it a lot warmer also. Now, why would there be a higher oxygen content? Well, let's think of some of these giant dinosaurs with long necks. All right, their nostrils were only the size of horse nostrils. So think about it. For them to breathe in enough oxygen to oxygenate their entire body, the oxygen content of the earth was probably a lot higher back then also. So talk about a greenhouse effect that we're so scared of nowadays. Oh, it was like that back then. All right. Now, compare this to what the evolutionists are trying to push on us. They don't even know where Earth got its water. So, and the only way they can divine how this works is what they call uniformitarianism. And that pretty much is the present is the key to the past. All they can do is look at what they see today, the rocks they can hold in their hands today, the environment that we see today, whatever, and only surmise or deduce or theorize what was happened in the past or what it was like in the past. All right. Now, they are on the assumption of long ages, millions and billions of years. So that is the lens that they are looking at today's things through. All right. Now, how do we want to start this? Okay. So how did Earth's water arise? Now remember, they think the Earth was first a hot, molten lava with volcanic eruptions. It was just a hot, hellish place, okay, back then, after the sun was created and the planets were formed. So where did the water come from? They have some, questions about that. Did the water come before our solar system was formed or during Earth's formation? Did they get the water after Earth cooled? Or did Earth make water on its own? Now, if water was here before the Earth was fully created, surely all the heat from the volcanism expired the water off the Earth, so there would be none left. So it would have to get the water from somewhere else. So that's where they've ended up. Something had to deposit the water to the Earth. So they've come up with two choices, either comets or asteroids. Now the problem is deuterium, which is heavy water. So Earth's water contains approximately 1,558 deuterium per 10 million regular hydrogen atoms. So presumably if they're going to prove that comets and asteroids gave us this water, it's going to have to match that heavy water that Earth has right now. So far, they have analyzed 6 comets from the Oort cloud. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, let's write up here a little bit. A little diagram. All right, so here's the sun. This way we can see what we're talking about here before I go too far. The sun, smiley face. All right, and we're going to put 8 planets plus Pluto. They're not going to be in any ways the right sizes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Pluto. So this is Earth. This is Mars. This is Jupiter. This is Neptune. And this is Pluto. Okay. So, because we're going to need a little bit of space geography here. Now, between Mars and Jupiter is what is called the asteroid belt. Okay? Now, just past Neptune, including Pluto, out here is another belt. And this is called the Kuiper belt. K-E-I-P-E-R belt. And this is where a lot of comets are supposed to come from. This one and also past that on the outer limits of our solar system, way past that. Hopefully you can see this in there on the camera, is called, you guessed it, the fictitious Oort cloud. Fictitious. Well, we don't know. Nobody has ever seen the Oort cloud. I'll discuss all this in another video. But they believe it's there, so that's where they think more comets are coming from. Oort cloud. All right. So they were able to analyze 6 comets they concluded came from way out here, this Oort cloud. But they had 2,960 deuteriums per 10 million regular hydrogen atoms. That was twice as much as Earth's water. So they concluded, no, maybe the comets out here could not have been the one that supplied Earth. Okay, that's way too high. All right. Then they found comets. This is the asteroid belt, but they found comets in the outer parts of our asteroid belt, and they call those main belt comets. And they thought, well, possibly these comets are the ones that supplied Earth with water. All right, they don't know for sure yet. Now, they were able to analyze a Hartley 2 comet, but that came from the Kuiper belt. The Hartley 2 comet, they thought, came from the Kuiper belt. It had 1,610 deuterium, which was only about 60, maybe 50 to 60 more deuterium, which is a lot closer to Earth. So I thought, oh, maybe the Kuiper Belt supplied Earth with their water. All right, what about, then they found some meteorites. All right, these meteorites had crystals in them, crystals that are formed by water. All right, now the meteorites in our asteroid belt are dry, okay, but they thought, since they found meteorites from these asteroids, they're called carbonaceous chondrites, the early asteroids. The meteors, since they had the crystals, they figured maybe early on in Earth's formation, these meteors had enough water. Since the meteors are a lot closer to Earth, they would have a chance of actually hitting the Earth. Now remember, they need to bombard the Earth with a ton of these things. All right, now this is the hard part, okay? Space is huge. The Earth, compared, is tiny. The asteroid belt is super far away, all right? The Kuiper and Oort cloud are even further, all right? These guys have got to hit a moving target. Okay, Earth is not stationary. It's going around the sun, all right? They've got to get enough of these asteroids or comets to have the right type of water to hit our Earth. And the further away, the worse it gets. The problem is that they figured the further away, probably the more deuterium is. So they're hoping this is the main thing. For one thing, it's closer. And maybe a lot chance of getting us enough oceans and oceans worth of water. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to go through a few articles that talk about this really quick. I'm not going to read the whole articles, but just to go through the, a little timeline about how they think about Earth's water. 2007. This article titled The Enduring Mysteries of Comets, written by Charles Q. Choi. Did comets help create Earth's seas? For years, scientists thought comets slamming against the newborn Earth helped deliver water to a once dry planet. But roughly a decade ago, this view was shaken by the discovery that the water in comets and Earth's oceans did not match up in terms of hydrogen isotopes. They're talking about the heavy water. Calculations then showed it was highly improbable that enough icy rocks from the suspected homes of comets, Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, could have collided with Earth to supply its oceans. Like I said, they actually got to get there and hit it. In the last 2 years, however, researchers have discovered comets in the outer part of the asteroid belt, called main belt comets, may have the right levels of hydrogen isotopes and are perhaps close enough to Earth to have realistically brought us the seas that life emerged from. All right, let's read 2011. This is also by Charles Q. Choi, titled Comets Created Earth's Ocean, Study Concludes. The dirty snowballs known as comets might be the source of Earth's water after all, scientists say. Now, Earth-like water has been discovered in the small oddball Hartley 2 comet. This comet originated from the Kuiper Belt. That was that comet we talked about earlier. Suggesting this is ultimately where much of Earth's water came from. But let's keep reading. Comets are natural candidates for the original source of the world's seas, loaded with ice as they often are. However, computer models of how the solar system formed have suggested that asteroids actually were the source of most of the planet's oceans, with comets delivering no more than 10% of the Earth's water. This article in itself kind of backtracked on itself. By Enrico de Lazaro, Carbonaceous Chondrites as Source of Earth's Water. The evidence for this ice is now preserved in objects like comets and water-bearing carbonaceous chondrites. The team's findings contradict prevailing theories about the relationship between these two types of bodies and suggest that meteorites and their parent asteroids are the most likely sources of Earth's water. That was the early asteroids before they lost all their water. 2014, Rosetta spacecraft's comet watery discovery, what it means for Earth, written by Miriam Kramer. They're still asking, where did Earth's water come from? Comets or asteroids? New data from the Rosetta spacecraft exploring Comet 67P show that comets, once thought responsible for seeding Earth with water, might not have delivered most of the planet's water after all. The new finding is giving scientists a more nuanced view of the solar system and its plethora of cosmic bodies. If even a small number of comets like 67P impacted Earth in the early days of the solar system, it still would have greatly changed the molecular composition of the planet's water today, according to Altwig. They're talking about, again, the heavy water. Therefore, it seems unlikely that these kinds of comets brought water to Earth. Altwig thinks that it's more probable that asteroids brought water to Earth. While asteroids are dry, rocky bodies now, it's possible that these space rocks were water-rich during the early days of the solar system. Altwig thinks that asteroids may have bombarded the Earth about 800 million years after the formation of the solar system, bringing water to the early planet once it cooled after formation. All right, let's go to 2014 again. This is written by Elizabeth Gibney, and this one says, Earth has water older than the sun. Well, as much as half of the water in Earth's oceans could be older than the sun, a study has found. By reconstructing conditions in the disk of gas and dust in which the solar system formed, scientists have concluded that the Earth and other planets must have inherited much of their water from the cloud of gas from which the sun was born 4.6 billion years ago, instead of forming later. The problem is they still think the Earth was super molten hot and that water should have steamed off, but maybe not. Even if the formation of typical stellar systems does not destroy all of the pre-existing water, it is still unclear what determines whether a planet gets to become wet and to stay wet that way, says Cecilia Ciccarelli, an astronomer at the Institute of Planetology and Astrophysics in Grenoble, France. All right, 2017, written by Cheyenne MacDonald, says, did Earth make its own water deep in the mantle? New theory could solve the mystery of our planet's liquid past. Another new theory. Wow. All right. Scientists have long been perplexed by the mystery of how Earth got its water, with many suggesting it formed after icy comets collided with our planet billions of years ago. But a new study suggests it may have been born within Earth itself. New computer simulations show how reactions between liquid hydrogen and quartz in the upper mantle can form water, and the researchers say this could trigger earthquakes deep below the surface. As long as the supply of hydrogen can be sustained, one can speculate that water formed from this process could be a contributor to the origin of water during Earth's early accretion. John Tsai of the University of Saskatchewan in Canada told New Scientist. That's when it was forming early in its volcanic days. Two new studies suggest that there may be vast quantities of water as far as 620 miles below the surface. Without this huge store of water, where did we hear about storehouses of water underneath the depths of the earth? Was that in Genesis? How could they know back then about these? The geodynamic activity that causes volcanoes, which are important for generating soil and sustaining life on the planet, would cease. Let me read that again. Without this huge store of water, the geodynamic activity that causes volcanoes would cease. All this time, Earth, in its early formation years, was molten rock volcanic without a lot of water. And whatever water may have been there was evaporated off. But volcanoes, according to this, without water in the Earth's crust, volcanoes would cease. Something to think about. In the first study, researchers from Florida State University and the University of Edinburgh estimated that water exists far deeper in the earth than previously thought, stored in a mineral called brucite. Although the amount of water is unknown, researchers believe it could account for as much as 1.5% of the weight of the planet, the same amount of water as all the world's oceans put together. The latest research found that brucite, which is made up of 50% magnesium oxide and 50% water, transforms into more stable 3D structure at great depths. In a parallel study, researchers from Northwestern University in Illinois suggest that this water is much deeper than any seen before, at a third of the way to the edge of Earth's core. That is a lot of water. But instead of having, they're talking about these brucites, which are 50% magnesium and 50% water contributing to the water. I think they got it backwards. It is the water first that created the crystals. And there is other crystals that they have found also proving this huge depths, deep storehouses of water in the earth way further down, a lot earlier, a lot longer ago than they suspected, or earlier in the first creations of the earth. Here's another article put out by Earth Observatory at nasa.gov. Evidence of the earliest Earth. Mineral crystals from the Jack Hills have begun to tell about the history of the very early Earth. The crystals appear to contradict the conventional notion that the first 500 million years of Earth's history, the Hadean Eon, were a continuously violent and chaotic time when endless volcanism and continual meteor bombardment kept a global magma ocean simmering across the surface of the newly formed planet. Instead, the chemical makeup of the Jack Hills crystals suggests that they formed in the presence of liquid water, likely even an ocean. These crystals proved evidence that even the very early Earth was cooler and wetter than scientists used to think. Seems to me it's proving more of the biblical account of creation, how God created the land, pulling it up out of the watery matrix and separating it from the water. Sounds to me like that's when the crystals were formed. It's hard for scientists to know exactly what went on during the Hadean because no one has found any rocks that survived Earth's infancy. They have no samples. So it's all guesswork. Scientists use the chemical and physical structure of rocks to infer not only how old they are. You hear what I'm saying? They infer not only how old they are, but also something about the conditions in which they formed. Well, they have none of the early rocks to infer anything or figure out anything the conditions were when they were formed. They have none of that. All right? So, it is all conjecture. And they're all trying to put it in their evolutionary theory. Nothing else matters. No other theories. Throw out the Bibles, even though the Bible is a written record written down. They don't even have a written record. All they have is an anti-God theory. So now, not only do secular scientists have the burden of explaining where Earth's ocean water came from, they now have to explain 2 oceans worth of water. All that water that's underneath the earth in storehouses that they pretty much quoted the Bible on. Scripture, however, says that God created earth from water, not from molten rock. 2 Peter 3:3-5 says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. That's uniformitarianism right there. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. The discovery of water deep below the surface comes to no surprise to the biblical creationist. They still don't know where Earth's water came from. Just remember that when they tell you that evolution is proven true. A little bit more here. Not only do secular scientists have to figure out Earth's water, but guess what? They also have to figure out Earth's continental crust. This article titled, Still Searching for Geology's Holy Grail, written by Tim Clary. The origin of the continental crust continues to baffle secular geologists who often refer to this mystery as the Holy Grail of geology. The outer surface of the earth is composed of numerous tectonic plates that are cold and brittle compared to the hot mantle below. No other planet seems to have a similar plate system. In addition, Earth's plates are composed of 2 distinctly different types of crust, oceanic and continental. Explaining the reason for the unique crust and plates on Earth has been the subject of an ongoing research and debate for decades. Where did Earth's continents come from, and how did they form so rapidly and early in Earth's history? They don't even know that. The best answer to the origin of the continents can only be found in the pages of the Bible where we read, Then God said, Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let dry land appear, and it was so. God spoke the continents into existence all at once on day 3 of the creation week. A naturalistic explanation for such a supernatural event will never be found. Therefore, secular scientists will undoubtedly continue to struggle with the so-called Holy Grail of geology. But we can take heart knowing that the continents are visible evidence of God's eternal power of creation. I want to thank you for watching this part 1 of day 3 of creation versus evolution. Hope this gives you something to ponder and to understand that the theory of evolution is far from scientific fact. Evolution is a philosophy and should be taught as such, just like creationism. Philosophy can lead to scientific theory, which leads to scientific discovery, which can lead to scientific fact. But the past, especially the distant past, can only be theorized.